I was living my dream at
Hmm.
that point. I was touring in a bus with a group of really incredible singers. Like there was no weak link in our group, and members change over all the time in that band. I think it had been going for like 20 years or something.
Hey Matt, how are
Kind of
you? I'm
consecutive.
Adam.
Yeah. Hey Adam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome. I appreciate you doing this. Thank you so much.
No worries at all.
Cool. Well, this is about you and your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new album.
Cool. Sick, sick, sick.
Awesome. So I would start off first off, where were you born and raised?
I was born in the Sutherland Shire, South Sydney, Australia.
Hmm.
Well, New South Wales, Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, correct title.
What was that
Um,
like?
it was, I mean, it was cool. It's just like the suburbs.
Mhm.
Um, it kind of it's a pretty funny place. I don't live there anymore. Um, but it was a good spot to grow up. Like lots of different schools, and um, there's a beach close by.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so I was surfing from a young age and stuff, and lots of like cool sort of musical people.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, yeah, pretty normal place, really.
Yeah, that's
Nothing
cool.
like, yeah, nothing extreme.
Yeah, I live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but I'm originally from San Diego. So I feel like, beach towns are pretty similar in a certain aspect, maybe. Oh, you froze on me.
Oh yeah, now I'm back. I
Okay, you're
have
back.
I've got that Elon Musk internet. I think he's spending too much time trying to tank Twitter instead of work on his existing businesses.
Oh, okay, no worries. I was just saying that I'm originally from San Diego, California, so
Sick.
beach town as well. That's cool that
Yeah.
you grew up there. You said you did surf. I didn't surf. I was awful at it.
I think it's cold there, right? Is it cold in San Diego?
The water is, yeah. I mean, Pacific
Yeah.
Ocean, so it's in you definitely needed a wetsuit of some sort pretty much all
Yeah.
year, which is also a reason why I wasn't very good at it. I had friends that would get up at like 5 a.m. and get out there in the water, and
Yeah.
I skateboarded as a kid. It was dry, and
That's cool. Yeah.
yeah, and you could do it
Harder
later.
harder surface though. More
Yeah, no,
consequences.
totally. Yeah. So if you ate shit, it hurt a lot more than well,
Yes.
actually, maybe not.
Well, it depends. If you get a fin to the face, I mean that's
Yeah,
not
that could
nice.
that could be
Coincidental.
rough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did you grow up in a musical household?
Yeah, to some degree I did. My dad played a bit of piano, and my mum could sing for sure. She
Mhm.
was very shy though, and never really used her singing voice, too often. Um, and me and my sister, when we were really young, we would always be singing, and we'd be super into what was happening in music. Like there would be this like Hot 30 countdown that we would tape on cassette, and
Oh,
that would
cool.
be what we'd listen to that week. And um, my sister's a little older than me, and she's very clever and always been better at everything. And I think singing was the one thing that I could kind of compete with her in from an early age,
Okay.
and so I ran with that.
Would she show you music? Like any would
Yeah,
you discover music through her?
we would kind of both together. It would be a thing that we did even when we were like 6 and 7.
Wow.
Listen and tape the radio. First
Mhm.
forms of piracy. Um, and yeah, I think. I mean, I was super drawn to it. I remember when I was maybe 5. We went past a music shop, and Dad was driving, and I saw this. It was like I still remember it, like the Les Paul with the yellow and black sort of dartboard style.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know that
Yeah, yeah, I do.
paint job that they had,
Uh-huh.
like some limited edition. It's probably some guitarist's signature model or
Yeah,
something.
signature to guitar, sure.
And I was like, hands on the window, like, oh my god, I want to play guitar. And Dad stopped the car and bought me this cheap, nylon string, and found a guy to give me lessons like a week later. And
Wow. I
you
was gonna
know,
say, I thought you were gonna be like, he walked in and he just bought the Les Paul. Like, damn.
yeah. Dad was loaded,
He
man.
really went for it.
He didn't give a
You better
fuck.
learn this thing.
Yeah, no. So and that was good, you know. And Dad was really encouraging and very much. So was Mum, but I think Dad was very much like, you know, you must, if you want to be good at something, you got to practice, you got to sit down, and you got to be patient. And you know, I would sort of walk out of my room after like 5 minutes, be like, I hate this, I can't do it. And he's just like, well, you've spent 5 minutes doing it, you know, come on, just sit in there for another 10 and see what happens. And then something would click and my finger would do what I wanted it to do and be like, oh, practice does sort of help. And so from a young age, I started to dial that in, which was good.
It's cool that he was that encouraging.
Yeah, he was great like that. And he was a painter as well. He still is to this
Oh,
day. A
wow.
really great acrylic sort of oils painter. And it was kind of his second job. He was a firefighter, and then they kind of do 4 days on and 4 days off. And a lot of
Yeah.
the guys that work in that profession sort of have a second trade. So his was painting.
That's
Art.
cool, man. That's what
Yeah.
I went into radio, but what I wanted to do as a kid was always to be a firefighter. My best friend's dad was like one of the chiefs of police or of the fire department in San Diego, and we'd get to go to where he was stationed, and they had like the old school fire pole, like you had to jump out and grab, and that is like pretty sketchy. I mean, you're like on a
Totally.
second story, and the pole
Yeah.
isn't like you can't just grab it, like you literally have to jump out to it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I got to do some cool stuff with them, and I remember interviewing him for a college class, and I asked him like what the hardest part of his job was, and he told me like straight up like he's like going and telling you know, a young mom that their kid's dead, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I don't think I could ever do that.
Yeah. Well, my dad actually was a police officer before he was a
Oh,
fireman. And
wow,
that was a big part of their job too. They'd have to knock on the door and be like, so and
that's
so has
so
passed
rough.
away, the person that you love. And it was, yeah, super exposed to a lot of probably traumatic stuff,
Yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, when I heard that, I was like, okay. And then I asked him what the best part is, and he said, "I'm America's fucking hero," and I'm like, okay.
That's so good.
Yeah, but that's cool that your dad was a firefighter. Was he at a station that had the fire pole?
That's a good question. I don't know if the OH&S in Australia would let the I mean, the occupational health and safety would even allow fire poles in
The fire
Australia.
pole
We're
anymore. There
a
was very
strict
few
country.
left. I mean, they took most of them out. I mean, he was in an he was at an older station that actually had it for a while. I mean, he didn't stay there, but yeah, they were pretty they kind of phased those things out. I think.
Yeah. It's like
Uh,
there's like a show, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that
uh-huh.
they like the detectives really hate the fire department, and then there's this one episode where it's like they have this thing where they're trying to take over their bar that they drink at, and the firemen are like, "Hey, we lose one guy a year to the pole hole," and everyone starts laughing at them. They're like, it probably would create a bunch of injuries, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, it's not as easy as it may seem to
No.
be. Like you literally have to jump out at it. That's funny. But guitar, was that the first instrument you learned how to play, or were you put on piano as well? Because you said your dad played piano.
Yeah, no, guitar was the first instrument I learned. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and then when I expressed, well, when they realized I could sing, I had a pretty natural thing with singing. They, you know, they kind of were like, oh, we can't afford both guitar lessons and singing lessons, so you know, you should pick one. And I think they naturally were kind of like, you should probably do the singing thing.
Mhm.
Um, so almost begrudgingly, I started doing singing lessons. It was quite scary when I first started doing it because it just wasn't as fun.
Mhm.
Um, but I had a great, my first teacher, I remember him, his name was Stuart, and he was this incredible opera singer that went on to, he lived in, I think he still lives in Germany, I'm sure, but he's in massive operas over there. And
Wow.
I've seen him like on YouTube and stuff, like performing in front of you know, massive crowds. And it's really cool to see,
That's
you know,
cool. I wonder if he probably follows your career
his
too.
career.
He's like, oh, this is cool. This kid, I
Yeah,
taught this
yeah,
kid. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That's
yeah, of
awesome.
course.
I was wondering if you were being taught to sing opera, or was it just you happened to have an opera vocal teacher?
Originally, I mean, yeah, there were. It wasn't. I guess it wasn't quite opera, but there were definitely some, uh, you know, some operatic things.
Mhm.
I think it was very traditional, just in general. So like stuff from musical theater, or musical theater oriented music and
Okay,
songs.
sure.
Um, and I only really was taught by Stuart for maybe a year, and then or two, and then there was a singing school that sort of taught more modern styles of singing,
Mhm.
which I was more interested in because I listened to a lot of R&B and soul music and stuff, um, and they sort of were way more that way inclined. And you'd learn a modern song, and they'd go through it with you, and they'd sort of teach you, how to create more flexibility, and doing trills and all that stuff as a
Mhm.
vocalist. So, um, and they were good friends of ours from the church that I grew up in.
Okay.
Amazing people actually that ran that singing school. Her name was Connie, and her husband Seb, who he sadly passed away. Um, but yeah, they kind of taught me most of sort of my really how I sing today. They
Mhm.
sort of created the building blocks for it. Yeah,
Wow. And with, being in the church, I would imagine that were you did you sing on in the
yeah,
choir or yeah, the gospel band or whatever? And
yes, yeah.
was that kinda your first exposure to performing in front of people?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I would even at a young age, I would be doing musicals and
Mm.
Eisteddfods and talent quests and things, and um, I definitely I don't quite know the timeline. Like it's a bit foggy.
Sure.
I don't know if I was like 8 or if I was 12, or
Yeah, yeah, no big deal.
um,
I was yeah.
but I think I
But you
do
did
remember
everything, it
being
sounds
in
like.
like, yeah. I remember being in like primary school, which is grades 1 to 6.
Mhm.
So being like from 5 to 11, I was out of school a lot even then, and singing in competitions and yeah, doing all that stuff. So I definitely wasn't a stranger to performing. I was very hard on myself. Like if I got one thing wrong, I'd come off crying.
Oh.
And like dad'd be like, chill out, mate. Like it's fine. You did great. And I'd be like, no, I messed that one note up. I'm like, that ruined the whole thing for everyone. I'm still a little bit like that to this day. Um, I don't cry
That's
as
good.
much.
As much. Um, well, I mean, it sounds like you did a lot of competitions. I don't wanna spend too much time on it, but I think it's interesting that you did, like, Australian Idol, I guess is what it is.
Yeah. It's the Australian American Idol. The
Australians
American
American
Australian Idol.
Idol, okay. How did you get involved in that? Did they reach out to you? I've interviewed a lot of people that have done the one here, where there's always a different journey, whether it be you stood in line at some, place or
Yes.
you got a DM on Instagram or Twitter or something. I don't
Yeah, from
know.
some minor producer. No, I to be honest, I kind of maybe it was the fifth or sixth season in
Mhm.
Australia, and I was always too young to go in it, and I always kind of laughed at it. I was like, oh, I mean, Australia's, it's not as prestigious as maybe the American one. If you get
Mhm.
into the American one, I mean, you're getting chosen from a super large pool of singers.
Sure.
Australia is a smaller pond.
But
Not
they do
discrediting the
spend
fact that there's
about
great singers here.
right, they do spend about 5 episodes, I think, every season, though, like, just going around,
Yes.
getting the people in or kinda clowning them or whatever, so, I think that's half
Yeah.
of it is just that portion. So maybe you guys
Yeah.
cut to the chase a bit quicker.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's always some guy dressed as a tree, or
Okay.
something, or like like some animal costume that would
Sure.
just was trying to get on telly, like the original Trolls. You know, those guys were
Right,
great.
right.
But yeah, I mean, I never really saw that as a viable thing for me to do. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, you know, you should go in that, and you might do well." And I was kind of like, "Yeah, but it's kind of lame, you know." And I even at that age, actually before Idol, when I was 14, quite a long story, but I joined this sort of evangelical singing group. It's five
Mhm.
singers, and we would go around to schools and churches and community centers and perform for like an hour, and then there was this sort of this ministry part of it, and then we'd sort of invite the kids from the schools to come to the local youth group and the church, and we
Mhm.
were kind of, I think, semi-employed by these local churches to, you know, jazz up the idea of coming to church.
Mhm.
And you know, we toured in this small bus, and I got so much performing time doing that. Um, we play like 9 gigs a week sometimes.
Oh,
You know, it was
wow.
full on, yeah, like a church, a school every day. And then like on Friday we'd double up and play the youth group, and then on Sunday we'd play 2 shows. And certain churches would be big; they'd have a Saturday service as well. So it'd be, you know, it was it
That's a
was full
lot.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
especially for a
So
14-year-old.
yeah, I loved it. I was like, I was living my dream at
Mhm.
that point. You know, I was touring in a bus with, you know, a group of really incredible singers. Like there, you know, there was no weak link in our group, and you know, members change over all the time in that band. I think it had been going for like 20 years or something
Oh, wow.
before I even joined. Um, and I think I got quite lucky. I had a group of people in there with me. I mean, they were a lot older than I was,
Mhm.
and my parents didn't want me to do it originally because I was still in school, and then they were just like, "Oh, you're not really enjoying school, so why don't you just, you know, it's okay, go and do it." Um, and yeah, so I exited out of that at about 15, and then went back to school for a small amount of time, and then as soon as the Idol auditions came around and I was of age the next year, my dad again just hit me up in the morning, being like, you know, the auditions are on today in the city. Come on, mate. Come on, let's go. And I was like, I don't want to do it. Like, you know, it's so lame. And dad was like, you know, you don't want to miss out on these opportunities, mate, and blah, blah, blah. And he gave me this big spiel and somehow convinced me to get up instead of, you know, go surfing or whatever I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And I went and stood in line. And
Oh.
I remember, you know, I was all jazzed up in my like leather jacket, and I had like this cool scarf on, and like my sister had dressed me, and like, you know, the camera guys straight away were like, "Oh mate, why don't you sing something for us?" Like, and I was
Yeah.
like, "No," I was like, "No," like fuck off, basically, like get out of my face. And
Yeah.
then the guy was like, "This is the whole thing. Like we're filming people. Like, you know, if you don't want to be filmed, then what are you here?" And I'm just like, "I don't know, man. My dad made me come here." And like they were kind of just like wrote me off straight away. These guys, and I remember that specific cameraman because he worked on the show the whole time, and he was actually turned out to be a total legend.
Oh, that's
But
cool.
we always remembered that moment where he shoved the camera in my face straight up in the auditions, and I was just like, "Piss off! Like, I don't want to be filmed." And he's like,
Yeah.
"It's a TV show. Like, it's like, what are you? Why are you here?" Um, but yeah, so I did. You know, you go through a few rounds of auditions, and
Mhm.
I remember waiting the whole day to sing, and uh, um, when I finally had my opportunity to audition, the people were like, "Oh, you know, didn't really expect you to sing like that, and you know, you should go and meet the producer." And I didn't see anyone doing that the whole day, and I went straight away to meet the executive producer of the show
Wow.
from the very first audition, and then he was basically like, "You're in, even though you got to do the judges thing. After that, we're going to film that in a couple of weeks, you know, with the celebrity judges."
Mhm.
Um, and you know, he was basically coaching me through how I should conduct myself, the kind of song choices I should have, and he sort of challenged me on the kind of music that I wanted to sing, because I had very different tastes to probably what the show would have wanted from me. And they
Mhm.
probably just saw this like young kid with long hair and, we're like rubbing their greedy little fingers together, being like, "Oh, this is going to be a main character in our
Yeah.
reality show."
Found a
And
star.
well, yeah, it felt like that. I was being G'd up from that point.
Mhm.
Even I remember, getting to the top 100, and I would always try and shy away from the cameras. I'd stand in the back of the group. I'm like, "No one can see me." And then they were doing this big sweeping shot with a crane of like, "Here's the top 100." And I was like, "Oh, we're in the top 100." And then he'd be like, "Wait, stop." He's like, "Where's Matt Corby?" And like yelling out, like singling me out. And everyone's like, "Oh, who's this fucking Matt Corby kid?" And like
Sure.
everyone, I'm like walking to the front of the group, being like, "Hello," and they're like, "Stand right there in the middle." I'm like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" Like it's gonna be like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an interesting experience. I mean, again, I was a kid, and you
Right.
don't really know what you're doing. You don't know what you're in for. I
And it's
mean,
cool that you had that opportunity. I mean, like to be on, like to have
yeah,
that, you wanted to sing, you were touring at 14, and then to be able to go on television and then have the confidence to do well. I mean, didn't you get like, you got like second place or something, right? I mean,
yes,
I mean, that's
yeah,
wild.
yeah. It was pretty extreme. Um, yeah, I definitely I didn't see it in the most positive way. I think I got even more down on it the further I got. Um, and I had this real cynicism about it even from that age. And I think, I felt as though I was being really misrepresented as like a character on their show.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
and yeah, I feel like I was aware enough to know that, but I wasn't quite clever enough to put that aside and just navigate through it and just realize, take it for what it was. So I
Mhm.
kind of really pushed back a lot with the producers, and probably was really annoying to them,
Well, good for
just because
you. I mean, to still make it that far.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I tried to get out of the show a couple of times, and they were
Oh,
like, "You can
wow.
only leave the show if you have vocal problems." And I was like, I feel like now they would, there's a huge, way bigger conversation around mental health and stuff like that, and I was really struggling. Um, we have kind of some mental health issues that run in my family line, and
Mhm. Same here.
um, being exposed to the beginning stages of online trolling and stuff.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I had a MySpace back then, because that was the medium of the day.
Mhm.
And the more I did songs that I wanted to do, like I did a Death Cab song,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
people were like, "You fucking ruined Death Cab! I'm gonna fucking kill you!" Like really aggressive, like you know. And I would cop a lot of that, and then I would be on the show and I would be all sad, and then everyone would be like, "What a fucking spoiled little brat!" And attacking me that way, and I was just like, "Fuck me! Like I hate this. This is brutal." I'm just
Mhm.
getting smashed from like every angle. And I think the one thing I did do is, I mean, I never tanked a performance or anything. I always found that it was like, when it's time to sing the song, I was always like, game face on, let's go. Like, don't forget lyrics, hit every note, make this special. But everything else, like the celebrity thing that was created for you around the actual singing part, I really struggled with. And from that point forward, I was like, never want that for myself ever again.
Mhm.
Um, and left the show, and was definitely, I was like, I discovered everything I didn't want from a music career. you know um so yeah, it's
Yeah, I
interesting
mean,
process.
did you feel like, once you got done and, because especially since you do that well, like, do you feel like you had that kind of stigma when you wanted to write your own songs and, put out your own music, or like, "Oh, it's Matt from
It's that
Australian
guy from the
Idol," or
show. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Was that
And I
hard to
knew that.
deal with and kick, I would
Yeah, I mean,
imagine?
that was why I sort of didn't want to go on in the first place,
Mhm.
because I didn't see anyone survive that show and be taken seriously as a songwriter and have a real career in in music. I mean, some of them here have had careers of like as like TV personalities and stuff,
Right.
and and some of them are actually great singers and musos, but they would never be taken seriously. And Australia's a very interesting country with very tall poppy, and you know, if there's some pretty boy on TV, you know, looking like he's killing it, like everyone wants to cut them down, and everyone wants to always remind them of kind of like, you've done that shit thing, and like, fuck you, man, like, you know,
Right.
I'm never
Right.
gonna listen to you, like, and you're never gonna get played on this radio station or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like,
awful.
it's a funny culture, um which I think it actually, I kind of, I don't mind. In a way, I think it gives birth to a lot of really interesting music. That tall poppy thing,
Mhm.
it makes people. It probably, yeah. I don't know. Actually, don't quote me on that. But yeah, it was a hard thing to shake. It took a long time. I kind of I like talking about it now, just because I'm so far from it, and
Mhm.
I just think it's kind of an interesting part of my journey.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
here in the United States, a lot of I haven't paid much attention to it like the last handful of years, but the artists that win usually don't go on. There's a handful. I mean, you have like a Carrie Underwood or a Kelly Clarkson or something that just kills it after,
yeah.
but a lot of people don't. It's always like the third or
Mm.
fourth place person, or that doesn't win it all, but then has the career. I mean, and that's what you've accomplished. I mean, you got second,
Yeah,
but you're a artist and you put out records and albums and do really well. Whereas I
yeah,
don't know what the
but
person that won is doing, but you know what I mean? I don't, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's just one of those
Well,
things.
I think a lot of the time they get locked into a pretty heavy contract that's very restrictive.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I don't think record labels that take on those contracts would necessarily take them seriously either,
Right.
and give them enough, you know, time and creative license to formulate their own thing. If that
Mhm.
makes any sense. I
Yeah.
mean, they just want to cash in quickly within the time frame before the next idol starts, you know.
Right.
So,
Give them a single
you
that
know,
hopefully will do
yeah,
something and make them some money because they're going to own all of the
yeah,
licensing and publishing for it.
yeah. And if it doesn't, then like, sweet,
Yeah,
you know, we
whatever. We
got
got
our next
next
crop.
season, we got the next guy,
Yeah,
person.
yeah, exactly,
Were you
exactly.
writing like when did you start writing songs?
Probably around 14, I was
Oh,
sort of
okay.
trying to write terrible, terrible songs. Um, you know, I didn't. I mean, through Idol, I wasn't, just because I was kind of quite down on everything and having a bit of a difficult period. But definitely post Idol, I got, got quite serious about it, and it was, in my mind, it was the way I was going to prove to people that I, you know, was worth listening to. It's like, well, the songwriting itself has to be of a certain quality.
Mhm.
So you know, as soon as I was 18, I remember I started traveling to London, spending, you know, a few months there at a time, working with some really super clever people, um, in the songwriting world, and you know, learned a lot from those sessions, and you know, got some cool songs out of it, but more so just really cool experiences, and a broader understanding of what it means to be a songwriter, and how to start and finish, you know,
Mhm.
a song. Um, and I did that for a few years, and you know, I don't think I was very prolific in that time, but every every now and then I would stumble across something, a song, and I'd be like, oh, that feels like something I would actually sing, put on a record. And
Mhm.
I'd make an EP once every kind of year, I guess, of sort of 4 or 5 songs. And
Yeah, you put out a lot of EPs in the beginning of,
yeah,
your career there.
yes, yeah, there might be four EPs,
Yeah.
and then maybe one live one with a couple of songs that I never tracked in a studio. And
Um, well, you got signed
yeah,
to Universal Music. I mean, even before you had, with Brother, right? I think that was even before
yes,
that EP before that.
yeah. There was two EPs before that. I think one was independently released, and then the next one, which I think was called Transition to Color. Should know
Yeah, I
that.
think from what I'm seeing is
Um,
that's the one that you got signed on, at least to
yes,
Universal Australia.
yeah, exactly.
You had My
There's a
Songs
really
and then My
lovely.
Falls.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was listening to a lot of Patrick Watson. I was basically copying his voice,
Okay.
so thought he was the coolest guy. I mean, he's still kind of he's very cool.
Yeah.
Shout out Patrick Watson. Um, but yeah, that felt better. I felt like they had some respect for me as an artist. More so than just like you're that TV show guy. So I
Mhm.
kind of I liked I was fine with signing that deal, and it wasn't for a whole bunch of money or anything. It was more just for their support, and um,
Well, kind of a validation too, right? That that
yeah,
they, you know, not approve, I guess that's not the right word, but they believe in what you were doing. And they
yeah,
can look past the, oh, he's just the guy, American, the idol guy. And
yeah,
it's been years later, and then you put out your third EP, and then you get the deal.
yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting period too, because I was still spending a lot of time in the UK, and
Hmm.
I I was racking up a huge debt, which I didn't really know I was doing. Um, and I'd sort of, my parents had gotten a loan out for me, and we were kind of spending that money in hopes that an overseas label would pick me up and sort of even out the bank
Hmm.
deficit, the financials. And I was about to sign a deal with, I can't even remember the company. I think it might have been the Sector Universal over there. And I kind of had this really awful meeting with the head of the company. And we were sort of just like, we just really didn't connect at all. And I kind of found him quite rude. And he probably found me quite rude, because I think I developed from a young post idol. I was really like, I had my back up really quick.
Hmm.
Um, if some guy in a suit was like being an asshole, I would not be like, oh yes, whatever you say. I'd be like, kind of like, what, and like like direct it straight back at them, to be like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What is that question? What, how condescending, and he was just like, basically, get the fuck out of my office. And uh that deal was off the table the next morning, and then that's when it sort of got dropped on me. That's like, hey, you're in a whole bunch of debt and you're kind of screwed. And I
Oh,
think I was about 20 at this point. And so I went back to Australia, and I got a job in a coffee shop, and became a barista. And I loved that job, best job ever. um, Working with like epic people,
hmm,
and like totally different to anything I was used to. I mean, I'd had a few like customer service jobs as a kid, in and around doing music and stuff, but um, or parallel to, sorry,
yeah,
doing
yeah.
music, and and then this one was really like, I must get up every morning at 5, and you know, like get the grinders working, get the machine on, start running shots through it, wait for the 50 cyclists to rock up in the morning and order their flat whites, and move all the tables that I just set up, and like, you know, and pump it out every day, um, and work off that debt. And it was kind of cool. It was, I
Like
really enjoyed
humbling.
the job, and yeah, it was humbling. I mean, it was also just fun,
Hmm.
it just not having the pressure of being a performer and stuff, and just, giving a person like a hot drink that they like was
Hmm.
kind of fun, and seeing this immediate reaction of like, oh, thank you. get very much, you know, like,
Yeah, gotta get my
you know,
caffeine.
yeah, yeah, exactly, like my drugs, man. So yeah, I love that, and sort of slowly worked off my debt, and I think I lived off like $130 myself a week, which was enough
Wow.
basically to pay for fuel, and I was living back at my parents' house, um, and and then in that period, I wrote Brother, just in my childhood bedroom one night, um, and was kind of like getting the hunger back to make music again. And a couple of weeks after writing it, workshopped it with a few players. One of my best mates, T Bone, who was playing bass for me at the time, and this great drummer, Timmy Coggill, and we just sort of did a bunch of pre-prod in a rehearsal room, and then cut the record, the 4-track EP with Brother on it. Not really understanding what was about to happen, but in Australia in particular, that song kind of had a life of its own, and
Mhm.
just, yeah, it took off in this funny way.
Well, it
And
won a bunch of
and
I mean,
then
you won, like, Song of the Year, and it was, like, on
yeah,
the Triple J station, which is, from what I
well,
gather,
that was a
like,
huge deal.
insane, like, yeah, thing to be
Yeah,
on, and, um,
yeah,
it
that was, especially as an ex-idol, that was, they were very much like, we're not going to play at ex-idol, that's, there's
right.
enough,
They're too
there's
yeah.
enough great stuff going on separate from, supporting someone like that. And then, if they, credit to them, they kind of, they were like, what, we will play this, we don't mind it, it's fine. And then, it quickly became they were smashing it on the radio. And then everywhere I went, I just, like, people were like doing that noise at me, and I was like, oh no, what have I done? It's like, but
And
yeah,
what
but
a
it
cool
opened up,
feeling, I mean, to hear was that the first
yeah,
song you had ever had on the radio or anything like that?
pretty much
Yeah.
consistently, yeah, on rotation. And there was a couple of, like, little things. I know there's another local station in Sydney that did play some of my earlier EPs, and I
Mhm.
was so thankful to them, and it will always kind of be, they'll always be my favorite humans.
That's cool.
But yeah, for the Jays, like, they're a national station,
Yeah.
and they had a lot of sway. And I was, yeah, I was kind of taken aback at first, and a lot of doors opened up after that, and people were buying tickets to come and see me play. And
And that
yeah,
was kinda
it went from
before
me playing.
the Spotify streaming days too, right? Or
Yeah,
was that
totally.
yeah, so to have a song do
Yeah,
that well, and and just off the power really of, of radio, and you getting it out, that's awesome. That's not really the thing
totally.
anymore, right?
Well, I mean, a lot of that stuff, the way that records used to be put out back then, is almost irrelevant now.
I know. And
There were
hasn't been that
gatekeepers
long.
12, 13 years ago. I know it's only 13 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And, people would look to, stations like Triple J and specific media outlets, NME or Rolling Stone or whatever.
Mhm.
And they were the only places, they were the only sources of information on what was happening in music. And now it's like everyone creates their own little microverse on their phone that has their specific taste tailored to them through their algorithms that they create. And I
Mhm.
mean, there's very talented people at Spotify and Apple Music actually curating a lot of these playlists. Some of
Yeah.
it's AI, but some of it is actually people going, I like this record, and these are the associations with this record. And if
Mhm.
someone listens to this, they're probably going to like these other 6 things. And everything starts to get put into little universes,
Right.
and there's no centralized spot where people go, oh, Mr. Curator, and cool, thank you for that, and I'm going to buy that. It's sort of just like, oh no, I know, or my phone knows, basically, and I just have my own little. This is what I like, and it can be
Mhm.
so different to the other 5 people in the room with you, um, which I don't know. I don't know how that's. I don't know how we're going to move forward with people having proper careers in music, other than you just need to be so consistent as someone that's producing and writing music, and consistently, I mean, you know, pleasing those few people that have you in their little microverse, you know, if that makes sense. So it's a very
Right.
different landscape. Yeah.
It's really interesting because I heard somebody say recently, like, and it's so true, that your phone knows you better than anyone in the whole world. Like, that's
Yeah, that's
crazy
probably
to
about
me.
right.
Probably better than
Yeah.
like, even better than you, because it knows every keystroke you do, every little thought, like, oh, like this picture. Oh, why? Like, you just instinctively click a profile, whatever it may be. Like, your phone
Mm.
knows everything that you've ever. It's just so crazy to think
It is
this little
crazy.
device
Yeah.
knows more about you than anyone else in this entire world.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, it's an insane thing to think about, especially in regards to music.
Oh yeah,
Um, like, and I think in the last few years, music's just gone. Music it is crazy. It's like someone told me the other day, it's 100,000 songs come out a day now.
yeah. I've heard that. That's just
It's just,
mind blowing.
it's like how does one sustain a career when there's 100,000 other people every day trying to create a career for themselves in this particular art form?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a scary thought. I don't know how long that's sustainable for. Like, um, I've been thinking about it a lot recently, and I mean, I don't have any genius ponderings on it really. I just, it's more something that is like I wonder if it will decline at a certain point where people will be like, shit, there is no money in music anymore. Like,
Or
this is not, I'm not going to become this rock star I had envisioned for myself, and make all this money through, you know, making trap beats or like whatever you want to do. And I think at some point people will just be like, no, I'm just gonna go get an actual job, because this is not gonna help me live, you know. And I think the real serious ones, you know, will continue on as always. But I think it's attracted this whole array of, like, you know, you buy a laptop, you buy Splice, you can rip samples, and
Mhm.
boom, you're a producer, you know, just like that. And anyone else doesn't know the difference between someone that toils away in a space like this, you know, consistently playing instruments and trying to create something original and different, and someone that's just going like splice beats, boom, this, that.
Mhm.
Most of the biggest producers in the world are ripping splice beats, you know,
Whoa, I
which
didn't
again, no
realize that.
shame in that.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's, you know, that's that's the way it works these days. And there's no like police going around being like, no, you cannot do that. It's like it's a free for all. It's,
Right.
you know, it's just like pop art. It's whatever is the flavor of the day. And if, you know, Splice is killing it, you know, I mean,
Mhm.
probably the next step for me would be like, I would create my own Splice samples and
Right.
service specific, like, here's a bunch of jazz piano chords, here's a bunch of beats on the kit that I've recorded and engineered well, you know, here's a bunch of like funky bass playing or individual samples of like my 6 basses that I have here, and like my Moog and my Oberheim and all the, you know, like,
Ye
that's probably a really good way to continue to make, you know, money and pay my fucking mortgage. um
Right. Well,
you know.
I mean, it's interesting to think because, well, I love what you're saying about that, like, creating what's scary too is that, like, with AI, like, AI will be making songs and making,
I wonder
different
if they'll be
loops.
good though.
They've started and they're not good, but
Okay,
and they will
good, at
write
least they're not
jokes.
good right
Yeah,
now.
but it's like, I don't know. There's something
They'll
about
get better
live
though.
entertainment, but yeah, I heard, I think it was like the old CEO of Google were talking, and they said, like, entertainers will be the ones to survive all of that because at people, if you think back, the people that were the entertainers were the highest level, right? The people that were with the kings and queens and everybody. Like, so that genre will kind of always be its thing because, but I don't know, who knows, man? The computer is so crazy. But a neighbor of mine
Yeah.
does that. He plays drums with like Kelly Clarkson and stuff like on her show, television show. But he's a drummer that will record samples and sell
Yeah.
the drum samples.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. And you know, he
Um,
probably that probably makes him maybe better money.
yeah, I don't
It would be
know.
interesting to know what that income stream would be for him,
Yeah,
especially if
because
his samples are good. Heaps of guys would be like, "Fuck yeah, that sounds great. Put that in my song," you know. And
uh-huh.
it's, I guess it works similarly to Spotify. It's like however many hits and downloads you get of your specific sample, you know, you get paid out probably like a cent or something each time.
Right.
Um,
Because you would have to
I mean,
link it to like a Splice or somebody like that. Because it's like, how would anyone find that you have a killer drum sample? Like that's the part I'm
yeah,
always like,
exactly.
but anyway, yeah, it's
Yeah,
wild to think.
yeah,
Um, no, but it's crazy. But yeah, like you said, though, 100,000 people, but how many of them are good songs? How many of them are one? Like, how quickly are these people going to be like, you know what? Like, I haven't got any validation for anything I've been doing for the past 6 months or a year or 2 years. Like, let's hang it up. You know, we'll go
yeah,
get that barista job. You know what I mean? Like at some
yeah,
point,
yeah,
yeah.
totally.
And people like yourself who have had, you know, longevity and numerous hits, it's like you've already kind of built your community, and all it's doing is getting bigger, I feel like.
Hopefully, that. Yeah,
Well, um, I'm curious, guys. I really want to talk to you about your new album because it's awesome, and there's
yeah,
a quite a traumatic story from what I read, kind of surrounding it in the beginning there. Um, but having, you know, Brother be this huge hit and it's winning awards and getting nominations, but like after that happens, you come back and you do it again, right? With Resolution. Were you going into
yes.
something like that? Like, were you like, okay, this song did awesome, like I'm thankful for it, you know, was it, I'm sure you were, but it was like going into is like, is that going to happen again? Was that the end, like, was that the peak of it, or was that not a thought in your mind? Or
No, that was 100% exactly what I felt. Um,
okay,
it was funny, you know. I I got so, yeah, and I think I'm just a negative person, really. I
so
got
am I,
so
dude.
worried.
I'm always glass
Yeah,
half full.
yeah, yeah. I was like, yeah, I was so worried that that would be it, you know, and that how am I going to back that up? That song's quite unique. I'm not making songs like that, you know, even 5 weeks later. Um, and I definitely I had a bit of a freak out, and really made it like a thing in my head that was like, I need to back this up, and I need to back it up, like, you know, quick. Um, and I remember I started writing Resolution, and I was in LA at the time, and I was working with this great producer who, to this day, we still talk, and I would, you know, I would say he's a dear friend, really. Um, and a massive inspiration for me. But we were writing all these other great, cool songs that I thought were, you know, very interesting, and he was opening my eyes to a lot of stuff. And yeah, I didn't feel like we'd hit the thing, you know. We'd made that one that was like, nah, that feels like a total. That feels like the backup song, you know. That's gonna be the answer to what Brother had accomplished. And I kind of went like nuts for a couple of days as I started writing Resolution. I just kind of stayed in my apartment, and I didn't even speak to Mocky, the producer. I think at the time, I think maybe I was just texting him, being like, "Hey, I'm just working on this one song, you know, and just sort of want to just be by myself for a couple of days." And I just focused so solely on the right things to do. And you know, it's not even a complex song or anything like that, but I just felt like there was this feeling to it and emotion and the tempo of it. And you know, I was like, okay, you know, I will finish this. I'll finish this myself, and you know, I'm gonna, you know, I feel like this could be it. And I remember when you know, even that simple like melody of "You'll be my resolution," that I was just like, oh, as soon as I came across that, I was like, I think that's it. I think that's great. And I think I can like deliver it in all these ways. And I took it to Mocky, and he was just like, man, that's sick. That's such a good song. Like, and you know, we cut it with a whole bunch of other tracks that sadly never even got used for anything, which is a whole funny story in itself. But that one, you know, came out sounding great. And when I put it out, it definitely had a similar effect. I think at first people were like, well, like the guy that did Brother, I was like, this is just, and then the song kind of grew, and in a very similar way, maybe sort of more organically than Brother did. And then yeah, that, at the end of that year, people were kind of like, okay, it wasn't just a one hit wonder. Like he's hit this other track that, a lot of people are like getting married to. And like, I was getting, I was having, I remember, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell this story, but I remember working with Ryan Tedder, great, like one of the highest paid songwriters in the world. It's total
legend,
freak,
yeah.
Total legend. And he said that Harry Styles had come in to work with him. And Harry Styles came in and was like, this is ages ago, right? Just like after the song had come out. And he walked in being like, oh, I really want to write a song like Resolution. And that was the first time that Ryan had even heard of me, I think, in that conversation, and was just like, oh, okay. And like, listen to the song. He's like, oh, wow, this guy can like sing, and like, it's a really nice song. And I was like, okay, and like worked away with Harry that day, blah, blah, blah. But like, he told me that, and I was like, how funny, like, that's kind of cool to hear, that it reached all these interesting people all around. And
whoa, that's
yeah, I
wild.
felt,
That's so wild.
yeah, now it's wild thinking about it. He's bloody winning 5 Grammys or some shit.
Yeah. I mean, that was probably even what, like One Direction, or even had they
just
won
post.
that? Yeah, probably just post that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So
Whoa.
I mean, that was huge compliment. And yeah, so maybe Ryan made that up. Just to make me feel good, but it seemed like a genuine
worked.
story.
I mean, yeah, it sounds legit to me. Yeah. I mean, that's killer. And then did you end up working with Ryan Tedder quite a bit?
We just spent a couple of days together, and I was sort of doing the rounds at that point, working with a lot of different writers, and that was I can't remember. We kind of wrote a pretty cool song. There's a lot of songs that sort of just, constantly fall into the ether and never get revisited. And, that potentially was one of them. I mean, as well, at that stage in my life, the songwriting thing was fickle for me. Some days I'd be really on, some days it would be the worst shit you've ever heard. And there was very little consistency, and I still had really no clue what it meant, to be prolific and consistent as a writer. I would sort of just stumble across things every now and then, and my voice would do something, and luckily someone was recording on their phone and being like, do that thing again, that was good, whereas now I think I'm a lot more structured, and it can hear, if I sing or play something, my ears prick up and go, oh, that's a thing. I'm going to make a conscious decision to work and evolve that concept, that idea, that musical motif, or whatever it is. So had a lot of interesting sessions, at a certain point. I would love to go back and do that now, knowing what I know, and knowing what I know as a producer and as a musician and stuff, just because I've learned a lot in that period. And
sorry, go ahead. No, I didn't mean
I was going to say, after a lot of that time I spent in LA, and we kind of tried to make this my first record, and it sort of fell over on itself, and a lot of that was to do with me. I remember Mocky, the guy I was telling you about before, who's a very dear friend of mine, inspiring guy for me. He was kind of like, just go home and do, you need to do it yourself. I think he said, I think you have all these quite unique ideas, and I've heard you play the drums, and I've heard you play the bass, and you can work your way around a keyboard, and he's like, just develop that, and that's kind of how he would make his music. He was multi-instrumentalist, super clever. I think he started as an upright bass player, and he went to Berkeley for that, and
Oh wow.
and then he's crazy jazz head, and he's very much like, just go and make your own thing, and let me know, just like, I can keep me updated, I'm here for you, man, kind of thing. And so that's kind of what I did. I after we kind of failed making that record, and the label didn't like it, I didn't like it, I went home, and a friend of mine, him and his friends of mine, they're partners, they ran a cafe in Bondi, and I used to work there a little bit at the end of my tenure as a barista. And then when I'd come back after a bunch of this sort of touring and writing and all this stuff, they had a spare room in an apartment. Well, they had a spare apartment that was one room. It was this tiny apartment in Bondi that they kept their freezers in for the cafe. It was like 5 like deep freezers just like sitting all around the apartment. There's just enough room for like a bed and like a drum kit and a little desk, and like I had my keyboard and like a bass, and I bought a drum kit. And a friend of mine, George, who's a like amazing mixer, producer, mastering engineer kind of guy, he like lent me a mic and like a preamp and a compressor, and he was just like, learn how to use this and I'll show you all the basics of it. And so I just had a setup, bought a Mac and started using Logic, and just would lock myself in the room and put a mattress up against the door, because it was an apartment building filled with other people, and hoping that no one would hear me just fucking playing the drums so terribly, and doing all that. But I just started recording myself, and every now and then I'd finish after 9 hours of trying to figure out how to use Logic, and I was so slow at it, and just like playing drums bad and trying to edit them, and there'd be some days where I'm like, this is sick, this is the best thing I've ever done in my life, like, and like certain things came from it, which is cool. And actually there's a song called What the Devil Has Made that got released, and that is from that period of like me just like playing things, and like it's my very first like ever experiment of like just like trying to produce things on my own, and play all the instruments, and there's like a recorder on there like doing some line. Yeah, it was a really fun period though, and that was the thing that really ignited the next chapter of my musical career. And spent probably a year just dicking around, and I moved up to Brisbane. I worked with a friend, Rowan Jones, who I think is a genius and great songwriter. He used to play in a band called the Middle East. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I haven't.
They've got a very, very famous song that I think they probably resent that I say this, but they have a very, very famous song called Blood, that in like the indie world just went ballistic. And like, Justin Vernon was like calling them out, being like, this is the best band in Australia. And,
oh wow.
And trying to sign them to like the label that he was on. And they went on tour with Mumford and Sons through the States when Mumford and Sons were blowing up, and they were like a 7-piece band. Incredible. And in my opinion, probably one of the best bands ever in Australia. 2 lead singers, both of them were the main 2 songwriters as well. And both of them total geniuses. And sadly, 7 people on the road, no money.
Yeah,
that stuff eats away at you.
Yeah.
It's rough. And they luckily made a record that is still a record that I listen to. It's got some incredible songs on it. One song called Months that Rowie wrote that is just like, I can't even talk about it. It makes me cry.
Really? I'm just looking them up. I'm gonna. Oh, okay.
It's
I just found the album.
Brilliant album. Yeah. And it's got like a banana on the album.
Yeah, banana and like a skull guy.
Yeah.
It's called
yeah.
I Want That You Are Always Happy.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out.
Um, yeah, and I spent some time with him and learn a lot off him, um, and then yeah, sort of felt ready to sort of make my first album, which is me and my buddy Al, who's a very good friend of Rose as well, who I met in that time living with
Mhm.
Rowan. Um, he brought out a lot of like he brought out a lot of confidence in me, and you know, he was also sort of cutting his teeth as a producer, and we always were trying to do things differently, and we spent a lot of time together writing as well. And you know, we wrote a few songs for the first record, Telluric, and then another really great friend of mine, Dan, who's a mega producer.
Mhm.
He sort of came and cleaned it all up, and we wrote a few more songs. And um, I mean, that time for him probably was really annoying because we would have been like just on some trip, and he was like the consistent one that was like the full nerd making it all happen. Um, you know, being being the glue to our weirdness. And you know, he went on to. I mean, yeah, I think he's an award-winning producer on a lot of levels, and we made the first two records together, me and Dan, actually.
Oh, wow.
Um, that so Telluric and Rainbow Valley, um, and he even mixed Everything's Fine.
Oh, did
So
he really? Wow. Okay, so he's
yeah,
working with
he's
you
a
on
brilliant
all your
mix engineer as
albums.
well.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, he's a bit of like the Godfather kind of figure,
Mhm.
um, and
So
yeah, he
y
lives in Wales now. He's built a studio and yeah, doing his thing.
wow. So real quick, so you had a whole album done and then you scrapped it, the label didn't want it, and then you just started
Yeah,
over when you got back home? And that's
yeah, and
so
that
Taylor, because like, you know, years after the fact, because it came out in 2016, so it would have been like,
exactly.
yeah, wow, okay,
Yeah,
and then it goes number
so
one still. I mean,
yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah. I think people were like, it was such a departure from what I'd done previous. I don't know how it went to number one. Maybe it was still at the time where like, yeah, you could kind of force that issue. Maybe Universal worked their magic. I don't even know how I got there. But you
Had
know, I've had
some
a
good
few.
songs.
Yeah, I've had a few musicians and stuff um, mention that to me over the last few years. Just being like, that first record was really good, man. I was like, oh, really? It's like, thanks. You know, it's always a shock when I hear someone say that, but not that I think it's bad, but I just it was, you know, it was intentionally trying to be a bit left of center, as
Mhm,
much as I could be at the time, you know, based on the skills and knowledge that I'd acquired.
mhm. Do you
Yeah,
feel like at that point is when you said you were kind of trying to figure things out, but once that album came out, did you feel like that you kind of hit your stride as like you kind of knew what you wanted to do as a songwriter at that point?
yeah. I think I found like a few formulas for how to create. I don't think I still knew what I wanted to do. I think I still don't know what I want to do.
Oh,
Even
okay.
even even making this record when we started, I was like, what style should this be? You know,
Yeah.
what do you even do these days? And I have been working as a producer with a bunch of different artists. You know, me kind of driving and doing the production and engineering for other records, and it's been lots of different styles of music, and it's really broadened my horizons over the last sort of 4 years,
Mhm.
which I'd learned so much about myself through that, and and my taste had expanded so much. And then when it came time to like work on Everything's Fine, I was like, I actually don't know who I am anymore musically. Like, and uh, I thought it was a cool thing, really, that I had less rules than ever in my mind, even genrealistically, or yeah. Um, and it could have gone one of so many ways, you know. Um, if I had it fully my way without any intervention, it probably would have been really weird and probably more instrumental and experimental than like songs, which it became like songs, you know, which I'm really glad it did. And yeah, I worked with sort of three people on this one, and one of them was a girl, Matt Dunn, woman's probably better, who she's a proper genius. Like as a songwriter, next level, like infiltrates your brain. And you know, we can have a half an hour conversation just about life and stuff, and you know what you're up to and what's going on, and she's like working, you know, she's like working you in like in this funny way. And you know, I'll start making some music and stuff, and she'll be like, "Oh, that sounds dope." I'm like, "Yeah, cool, all right, getting somewhere." And then she'll sing some melody, and I'm like, "Whoa, like that was psycho!" And she's a really, really good singer. And I haven't written with too many people that can sing that well. And we had this beautiful back and forth relationship, trading how the melody should go and like how the singing should feel. And she was a really integral part melodically and lyrically in the writing process of this record, and really empowering for me as a singer. I think a lot of the times I'll do something weird, and you know, the other sort of crew in the room might be like, "Yeah, can you just do it a bit straighter, bro?" And I'll be like, "No, like, you know, I want to do it like this." And she, you know, if every time I threw some shape at her that normally someone would think was weird, she'd be like, "Whoa, yeah, love that." And I'd just be like, "Love you, thank you."
That's
You
cool.
know,
Yeah.
like, you get me. Yeah, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's really fun, you know, writing songs with her. And then Chris Collins, who is sort of the other main producer, me and him kind of tagged in and out a lot of just sitting in the chair and doing the things. You know, some days he would be the music bitch, other days I'd be the music bitch. And he was a great, is that the right thing to say? That's what we say in the studio. Like Chris would be like, "You gonna be music bitch today?" I'm like, "Yeah." You know, like, you know, and like, yeah, it was great. And he's yeah, very talented multi-instrumentalist as well. And was so happy to have him, you know, playing certain things on the record. And I was way less precious about, no, I must do everything myself. And you know, he brought a lot of cool flavors. And yeah, and then Alex Henriksen, who I worked on the last two records with as well, sort of, he's a bit of like a ghostwriter with me. He was sort of in and around the experience. We wrote For Real and Better Than That with Al and Nat.
Oh wow.
And yeah, he kind of knows me the best, but we kind of, when we work together, we end up just like hanging out and, you know,
Yeah, more of
not
a
getting too
hang
much
than
done.
like a work.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Or making some obscure instrumental that is just impossible to put vocals on, you know, something. Exactly. Yeah, which hopefully those recordings will all come out one day. But yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so that was kind of the process.
but did you record it in that room you're in now, or that?
Yeah, this
That's
is
what I
the
thought.
studio. So there's the hold
Wow.
on. There's the drums in this little corner here, and I think I can't even see what I'm pointing at. Oh no, that's the piano. The
Yeah, it
drums
looks
are
like
over here
over
in
there.
this
Look, I can
corner.
see the drums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
yeah, and it's just, you know, a little sit down. And
That's killer. But it
yeah,
was kind
just
of a traumatic journey to that studio, right? To start the album, or did you know the album you were going to start writing an album when, from what I read, there, you know, you had a flood and a lot
massive
of,
flood. Yeah.
yeah, and flooded your house, and it kind of
Yes.
forced you to live in the studio.
Yes. Yeah. So
And were you working on the album before that, or did it all kind of come
very,
in?
in a very minor way, I mean, me and Chris Collins were hanging out a little bit, and you know, he would come over, you know, for a couple of days once a month. And it was probably in the 3 months leading up to when we were like, let's actually do the writing and we kind of get like in writing and production mode at the same time, because when we're writing in here, all the mics are nice. It's a dead room. You know, if you get the take, it's the take forever. You know, we don't have to re-record anything anywhere else, pay for a fancy studio or whatever. So, you know, we set the day of when we're going to start, and that day, the worst flood of all time hit this area, and it decimated the area. It was pretty full on, and where this studio is 15 minutes from where me and my partner live, which is the house that got absolutely destroyed, and we're still not back there.
Oh my gosh.
There's like 2 bedrooms in this place. So, you know, it's not like we were camping inside the studio, but
you were you weren't at your home, right? Obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's rough.
And
all your
it was
stuff.
rough.
I mean, I don't know what the extent of it was, but I mean, having all your stuff there and having, I mean, just from what I read, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but it seemed like what a traumatic experience, because you were home with your partner and she was pregnant or was pregnant at the time,
she was
and you have
very pregnant.
you have a young child also on top of that.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh. I mean, I have a 7-year-old next month and a 15-year-old. I couldn't imagine that happening. Like, I wouldn't. Yeah, that's got to be obviously terrifying.
A flood is a funny thing. I mean, it's slow, you know. It's this slow traumatic event that that happens over the course of like a day and a half, you know. And where we live, where the house is, it's on the river. It's a flood prone area. All the houses are up on stilts and super prepared for it. And the whole community stayed when we got the warning from the SES, the state emergency services. They just send a text to everyone. They know where everyone is, and they're just like, "Hey, major flood warning."
Time to
and
get
everyone
out.
always gets that every year. You know, it's like, it's not this thing where, you know, Jenga, shush. It's not this thing where you it's like,
Take
it's
it
not
too
a unique
seriously.
thing.
Yeah. It's like we moved to Nashville and we get tornado warnings now, which my wife freaks out about every single time, because we've only lived here for like 2 years. Yeah, she's like on it, like on the watching TV and on Twitter, and I'm always like, I think we'll be okay. But she's like everything ready to go. But I could imagine, like, if you get that every year. I mean, I grew up in San Diego. We had earthquakes, and people are like, "How do you live there? Aren't you worried about an earthquake?" I'm like, "Well, they're so few and far between." But if you're getting something like every year saying, "Oh, there's going to be a flood," and then you're there and nothing happens, it's like, at what point do you just be like, there might be some water.
Exactly. And so, you know, everyone around us is just kind of like, don't worry about it. You know, just move your cars to high ground, which we all did, and just wait it out. It'll be fine. And I remember waking up, you know, the first day when the rains were coming, you know, the floodwater had covered the road, and, you know, it's got like 1.8 meters at least to lift before it's going to hit our floorboard. So we're like, okay, you know, see how this goes. It's still not bad. This hasn't even gotten to like the underneath our house yet. And then we wake up, we heard it rain all through the night, and we wake up the next day, and, you know, the flood water's like lapping at our like second step, and there's probably about 8 steps up into, you know, to the floor level of our house. And at this point it's like, okay, it's getting pretty serious. You know, we're watching like cows from the farm across the river just like swimming helplessly trying to survive. You know, one got caught in a tree really close to us, and I've got footage of it, me just calling to it, and it responded to me. It was like, "Oh, there's a person, like trying to swim to me," and then the current just took it. And like Zoe, my partner, she's like crying. She's like, "Did it die?" And I'm just like, "No, it's all right. It's, you know, old mate's house over there." Like, you know, a lot of it's so slow, and it's kind of half exhilarating. You're just like, whoa, you know, what's going to happen? And we have all day to prepare our house and be like, let's put everything up as high as we can, you know. Let's charge all our devices, you know, so we can call people. And the rain just didn't stop. And it got to the point where all the neighbors who had boats, they're all moving around, and they're all talking to each other, and they're all giving information up and down the river system. And there's a few communities on the river system. There's one in particular that's called Kondong, which is a very funny name, and they're really low lying, lower than where we are. And we spoke to one of our neighbors who was like, yeah, me and a bunch of the boys, we're going up there now because people are already on their roofs. And we're just like, what the fuck? Okay. And the rain was not stopping. And normally when it's at this point, if the rain stopped, it'll still rise by another couple of feet. But I was watching the storm on my phone, and it just kept circling around us. It didn't move across. It just sort of like, it was like, yeah, I'm going to get here, and I'm going here, and I'm just going to like, just do this, you know? And then it just got to a point where, I mean, we kept our 4-year-old just entertained, and like, have the iPad all day. Don't care, mate. You
Yeah,
know, like
exactly.
rules out the door. Like,
yeah,
you know, just like stay distracted while, you know, mum and dad sort this out. And then, you know, I was speaking to my parents who were kind of mad at me. They were like, we told you to get out of there and you didn't get out. And we were like, oh, we just sort of listened to the neighbors thinking it was going to be sweet.
right.
And then one of our neighbors, he came with his boat, and he was like, you guys got to get in now. He's like, this storm's going to ramp up even more. And like, it was almost at our floorboards. It was probably centimeters from getting into the house. All the power had switched off, which they do at a certain point because it just becomes so dangerous.
Right.
And my parents were like, don't get in anyone's boat, wait for the SES to arrive. And the SES weren't coming. They were taking care of way bigger communities. And where we live sort of always seems to get a bit forgotten. Just, there's not enough people for them to care as much, you know,
Sure. Yeah.
as other places that probably needed it more. And we jumped in our mate Fallon's boat. He took us to the bridge, which was high ground, and the whole community rocked up there within the space of about 6 minutes. And everyone's just stuck on this bridge, and it's freezing, and it's still pissing down, and everyone's just sort of slowly watching their houses be engulfed by this brown toxic water. And you know, there was cows and horses and dogs fighting, and like, you know, everyone just kind of like in shock. And
you can't do anything. You're so helpless.
Yeah. There were 3 absolute legends. I wish I knew their names. These blokes had the forethought and the goodwill about them to put their boats in the river 10 minutes up from where we were on high ground. They just drove to the part of the road where it was flooded and just pulled their boats in, and they came to Tumby Bridge, which is where our community, and got the whole 100 people just back and forth. It was like a 10-minute boat ride there and back every time. And they just kept picking up people, and they're like, we can't leave anyone there. You know, there's old people. There was a guy having a stroke. There was like 10 pregnant women.
Wow.
It was, you know, it was a scene, a full scene. And I put my partner on a boat with her mum, who's in her late 60s, and she's pretty vibrant, and, you know, she's not frail at all or anything. And my son, and, you know, my partner was pregnant at the time, and my dog, and I was just like, they're on this rubber ducky that, you know, is just like skimming over the top of cars and that are floating around, and like you can just see street signs like poking out, like sharp metal that could pop the boat at any second.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, I hope this fucking guy knows what he's doing, you know, like. And the boat was full of pregnant women. It was like the 5 pregnant women got on the same boat.
Oh man, like, that guy had like
I was watching them go.
Cargo, like precious cargo.
Yeah, the most precious cargo. I was just watching them go, and I was kind of like, that's when I started to tear up. I was like, oh my god, like they could die right now. This is pretty heavy. Yeah, and then, you know, 10 minutes later, I got picked up, and we had some friends that lived in the area where we got boated to, and they put us up for a couple of days. And we spent those couple of days as the water was going back down, helping out people that were still stuck. and there was sort of like this command center where everyone was giving water and food to, and then we were just running out on boats, you know, to everyone that stayed in their house, and everyone that there was like 100 people that got stuck in like a highway tunnel, and like all their cars got engulfed, and they were all just sort of just sitting there like with nothing. There was like a broken down chicken truck and 2 caravans that had barbecues, and they were just cooking up for everyone. It was the only food. Like we got there and like there were people like sketching out, you know, probably, you know, wanting a cigarette or wanting a, you know,
anything,
bloody joint or something, or like, you know, just freaking out. It was Armageddon for a couple of days. And then the cleanup happened, and you know, all the while I was just like, yeah, I was supposed to start my record a couple of days ago. Oh well, you know, like, we'll do that when we can. But yeah, so yeah, pretty extreme time, and you know, we're still trying to fix the house, and yeah, the ramifications of it, have been long lasting. So
did you? I mean, were you working, like, were the songs done on the record at that point, or were you able to like? Did you write about it?
There was maybe like, I think the only song that was done or that was written was Problems, the first track of the record.
Yeah.
I don't think anything. Oh, maybe and For Real. I think those 2 were written, but everything else was kind of like we had allocated this time to all kind of work together. Yeah.
And then you were living at where you are, and so you just were working on the album from there on out.
I had my 4-year-old just like banging on this door, just being like, "Daddy, Daddy, play with me." You know, every half an hour, and I was like, "Oh, bass guy's got to go." Like, you know, come back in and be like, "Yeah, how'd the bass sound?" I was like, "Yeah, pretty good." It's like, "All right, what's next?" And drums, and you know, whatever. So it was very it was good. It gave me less time to toil and be neurotic over the parts, and then, you know, it kind of helped the record in a way, just having that kind of it was a bit of a high stress environment for me. That I was like, I was operating so solely off just feel, and if it felt good, I was like, don't touch it, it's fine. You know, when we wrote Real, and you know, it had so few elements in it, but I was just like, I love it. I don't want to, let's not change anything, you know, let's just do a big soupy vocal in the chorus, and that's it. And yeah, it's just we just let it be what it was, and I really like that. You know, sometimes I have the tendency to just do too much and try and fix something that shouldn't be fixed. And
just
or force something into being
obsessing over something, or maybe just like overproducing something. I've talked to a lot of artists that made records during the pandemic, and they were saying they had having that problem where it was like, I just had to put this thing down and walk away from it for like a week, because just with unlimited time to sit around in your thoughts and then listen to the same thing, like I'm sure it just becomes just like your brain just thinks it's hearing something, but it's not, or whatever.
100%. It's kind of good to force yourself into a deadline and be like, no, this has to be done today, or this has to be done in 4 weeks, you know, and I'm going to actually put the calls in and be like, there's a record coming, and put the pressure on myself and be like, you know, let's go, let's do it. And I think I'd learned a lot as a producer and how to get things done quickly, you know, and I was very trusting of the process at this point of just what it was to work in this room and put things down. And I know how it sounded, and, you know, there's a lot of comfortability for me here already. I spend every day in here working on something. So, you know, I knew quite quickly if something was good or bad, and was happy to be like, no, I hate this, and stop. You know, today was a failed experiment. Who cares? You know, we'll come back tomorrow. Maybe we'll eat something different, get some, you know, get some new inspiration somehow. Yeah.
Well, I love the album, man. I think what you're doing is awesome. I appreciate your time today. I mean, wow, I've taken too much of your time. I thank you so much for doing this.
No worries.
Yeah, and I like I said, I love the record. I have one more question for you before I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists, although you kind of just gave some great advice now about setting a deadline.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a bad one.
But yeah, do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
I think I think yeah, there's no rules anymore, right? Um, and the more you can make something uh, that you personally are happy with, I think the better the music industry is going to be. You know, I think if you base what you're doing off trying to please even your manager or someone in your immediate circle or your friends or anything like that, it does it's doomed. Just like do the thing that in the moment you go, oh, I'm so proud of that, even though it sounds really weird and like it doesn't even sound like something that you might hear on the radio. It's like I just don't think that matters, and I think the more you can be uniquely you, the better. you know which is pretty generic advice, I guess, but I think it's really true. There really aren't many rules anymore with music, even sound quality of stuff. I hear songs and I'm like, man, that sounds so bad, but I like it so much. um and maybe there's something to that. It's like it feels different and interesting, and that's why I'm drawn to it. So yeah, I mean, that's my only advice.